Welcome back to RotoQL University. This is our MLB strategy course on Coors Field, why it's so important for DFS strategy. Starting with our lesson overview, we're going to be looking into Coors Field, also then touching on some of the important parts about the park, things you may not know, weather conditions, things of that nature, and then heading into why it affects DFS strategy in particular. And then we'll be talking about how it affects, how you can then implement the Coors Field effect on a lineup basis. So I have Sahil here with me.
How you doing, Mike?
Pretty good. And we'll pass on over just a quick overview on Coors Field.
Yeah, so Coors Field is where the Rockies play. For those who are not familiar, it's pretty much a mile above sea level, and it's 4,000 feet above the next highest stadium, which is Chase Field. Due to this, the balls travel a lot farther. So for the same distance hit in a sea level park, ball's going to travel 9% farther. And the air also affects pitching. Curveballs aren't going to break as much. Fastballs will travel a little bit faster, but the main thing is that curveballs aren't going to break. And we have our fun fact. Yeah, so this provides a visual to see that how altitude affects the ball distance. So 1,000 feet above sea level, you're going to get between like 1.5% increase in distance, and all the way up to a mile at Coors Field, you're going to get around 10% or 9% further distance. Another effect at Coors that can increase the Coors Field and the batted ball distance is warm weather. So in parks like Arlington, where the Rangers play, and Houston, when they have the roof open, if the weather's warm, the ball is going to travel a lot farther. So a warm day in Coors Field is a recipe for home runs. So here, this chart will kind of tell you about how Coors Field creates tremendous value in DFS. So what this chart is showing you is on the y-axis is telling you what the fantasy points per $1,000 are. So for a 5K player, the axis of 2 means that you would get 10 points on average. So back in 2004, you can see that there's a huge disparity that a 5K player at a non-Coors field is going to score around 9 points. But at Coors Field, they're going to score a little more than 11 points. So that's over a 20% increase for the same salary, just picking Coors Field players. Slowly, that kind of inefficiency has changed itself. 2015 was a little bit better. 2016 year to date, you see a little bit closer, but there's still tremendous value at Coors Field. You're seeing about 10% more fantasy points for the same salary on average at Coors Field. So what that means is that you're going to really want to evaluate what's happening at Coors Field and pick Coors Field players when they make sense. So this year, Coors Field has made some changes. So at the start of 2016, they wanted to kind of reduce the effect of all the home runs, all the runs. So they raised the left field line fence 5 feet, which is only a small portion of it. The bigger difference was in the right center field, they raised it about 8 feet. So that really has had an impact on the number of home runs, but it's also increased the number of triples dramatically. So when a pitcher is pitching out of the stretch, which happens whenever there's a runner on base, their batting average or WOBA is all higher. So what you may lose in home runs, you may gain in more hits overall. So how can we kind of take away from this in terms of actual strategy? Core field pitchers, just avoid them. DraftKings this year has really made an effort to lower their salaries. FanDuel doesn't do as much, but you're not going to get the same fantasy production. Strikeouts are going to be a lot lower because of the breaking ball's not breaking much. Unless it's a very, very short slate, I would really recommend not playing Coors Field pitchers, and I almost never do. So going on to hitters, as we saw 2 slides ago, there's still tremendous value in rostering Coors Field players. Their salaries are going to be higher, about 10% higher, but their actual points are going to be way higher than 10%. So you really want to take into account that. The lower priced Coors players are always going to be highly owned. And most people always have 2 or 3 Coors Field players in their cash games, and many players will kind of try to stack the whole game, a strategy that I've used plenty of times. I don't recommend fading Coors completely in cash games. Each slate is different. If you're trying to get some stud pitchers, you may not be able to play Coors, but in terms of hitters, there's always the best place for value. Tournaments are a little more complicated because people are pretty aware of the Coors Field effect. So you'll generally see the highest ownership percentages for the Rockies, stacks, or whoever they're playing at that time. But there are situations where I like playing Coors Field stacks. Usually if Coors Field puts up 5 runs, 3 runs the night before, people will be a little scared of rostering that many high-priced players. Then it may make sense to kind of have a Coors stack that may be a little under-owned than it should be, but it's still going to be pretty highly owned. And situations where Coors Field maybe put up 15 runs, 16 runs, people will kind of want to recreate that. And given the matchup, that might make sense to fade Coors in that situation. Yeah, so when you decide whether or not you want to stack Coors, always using an optimizer is something that we recommend here at RotoQL. Generally, you're not going to be able to stack with high-priced pitchers or top-end pitchers, but sometimes the salaries just fall into place, and that's really an effective strategy here. You can see that this lineup, which is still stacking the Rockies, and even though the Rockies put up 5 runs, you can see there's some pretty big values here. With Trevor Story really going off and Blackman and Cargo providing solid value. Yeah, and here's the opposite. Here's the Arizona stack that really put up a lot of points. Jake Lamb, obviously, with the monster game. And sometimes the strategy works when you take maybe the highest projected offense. It's not at Coors. That can definitely pay off. So here we really kind of hit it on all cylinders, putting a lineup that scored a lot of points.
Well, that's sort of a drill down on Coors Field and why it's so important in DFS strategy. Definitely check out our advanced cash game strategy and advanced tournament strategy presentation so you can see a little more about how Coors fits into the macro DFS lineup strategy.